guys, welcome back to the Turbo Hemi and the 67 Ford. And I got all the wiring done on the inside in the last video, and I said I was going to do the fuel system in this video, and that's what we're going to do. And hopefully by the end of this video, this thing's going to be really close to firing up, if not firing up. I don't know, we'll see how far I get. But the first thing we got to do is the fuel system, and I got a lot of parts for that sitting here. Alright, so for the fuel system, I got a whole bunch. This is AN line, a ton of AN fittings, more AN line, and more AN line. Some of this is for the oil for the turbo too, so we'll take care of that. Got a nice big Aeromotive fuel filter, and then this is the important piece. And this is the FI Tech Tight Fit Retro Kit 440 liter per hour pump. So it should be plenty of pump. And what this is, so the pump's in the box here, it has this tiny little bulkhead. And when I say tiny, I mean I can almost wrap my hand around it. It's so small. So this thing, I'm hoping I can squeeze this into the stock tank. So let's go take a look at the stock tank. So this is what we've got in here. And this is the stock sending unit. I want to keep that because that feeds the stock fuel gauge. This is the stock feed line. That's probably just going to get plugged. So I have this flange, which I am hoping I can kind of drop right in here like this, probably over here on this side. So I don't know if there's quite enough room to fit this whole flange in there. Might have to cut this and move it. I don't know. It worries me because this has fuel on it. But either way, I got to hole saw a big hole in this thing. So the very first thing I got to do to fit this in there is to use the fuel pump and pump this thing out so there's as little gas in it as possible. Then I got to pull it out and try to flush it. So let's start pumping it out. So I've got the fuel line into the can, and then I've got this just jumpered here right to the fuel pump. And that should fill that thing up. We can just run it until, basically until that pump starts sucking air. And we'll be all set. But this should get all the fuel out of there pretty quickly. At least I hope so. Well, fuel tank is out. It's full of water. That's what the hose is doing, and it's running out. My hope here is that I can drill this hole saw with the water in it and prevent this thing from lighting on fire. So there's not quite enough room here. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is just offset it back a little, and then I'll have to notch the top of the fuel sending unit. But that should work. So if I want it around there, I need to be, ooh, that's a little tight. Maybe about there, I think. Probably back a little bit more. Yeah, it's hard to tell. Well, let's try it. Oh, that is fastened to the bottom. Alright, I got this thing all set up per their instructions for height and everything, so that should all be good. It's got this nice big filter sock on it. So hopefully this thing should be able to weasel it right down in there. I put the sock that way so it doesn't hit the fuel level sender. And this should be a pretty stout setup. So I'll shove it in here and bolt it up, then we can put the fuel tank back in. Alright, this is all installed. Tank's back in. That fits pretty nice. I'm happy with it. I blew a bunch of compressed air through the tank to try to get all the water out. I'd say it's got most of it. There's still some in there. My plan now is I'm just going to leave this open and leave the neck open until basically I'm ready to start this thing. So probably a few weeks minimum at least. This thing will sit open, let it dry out. That way I don't get a bunch of water in the gas. But that all worked out. I'm happy with that. So now it's time to start making some lines, and I'm probably going to start up on the engine. Fuel system is done. Fuel filter's underneath. Lines run up here real nice. Super happy with the way that came out. I still got to put a vent line on it and go to an evap canister, but I haven't bought an evap canister yet. And then out here, everything turned out really nice. So I got the regulator here. This will go to the intake at some point. Feed line in, return line, and then the feed over to the intake. I still need to put new injectors in here. I just don't have them yet. Fuel pressure sensors in. I got spark plugs in it. Coil packs are on. So now it's time to put the exhaust back on. And we got to drill and weld on a wastegate over here. So I'm gonna start putting the manifolds on for the last time. This thing is coming together. I'm getting excited. This thing's gonna be getting close. So before I put the exhaust back on, this was the passenger side manifold. Now it's the driver's side because I flipped them. But these motors have EGR, and you can see there's a little port right here that comes up and comes out here to let exhaust gas go up to the intake. Well, we're not using that, and it doesn't even line up, even if I wanted to, because I flipped the manifolds. So I've cut off a bolt, I've dropped it down in there and left myself a good gap so I can just weld the crap out of that, and that'll block off the EGR port, and I won't have an exhaust leak. Boom! EGR is gone. Alright, that thing is ready to go back on. Exhaust is back on. I still got to cut an expansion joint in here because the gaskets split this apart, which I knew was going to happen, and I knew I had to put in an expansion in here, flex coupling. I just keep forgetting to buy one. I've got one on the 51. I got to put one in here, but I can do that later because this piece comes out. What I'm doing now is putting the wastegate. So the turbo sits here, and that seems like a really good high flow spot for the wastegate. So I got this little guy that I kind of just took the grinder to, and that'll fit right on there. And then the wastegate just V-bands on, which is kind of nice because I can rotate it later, depending how I want to do it. We'll plop on there, something like that. So I gotta weld it all up on there, and then it'll come out the side, something, I don't know, something like this. Somewhere through the wheel well or something. Should sound pretty nice. But I gotta get that thing welded on there. Alright, on to the last project for the fuel system, and that is to get rid of these stock injectors. I've got these 60-pound Deca injectors. They're a little bit taller than the factory ones, I think, so I'm gonna have to space the rails up, but not a big deal. I just gotta disconnect the fuel line, pull the fuel rails, and shove these in there, and we'll have a full fuel system. And with that 440 liter per hour pump, and then these 60-pound injectors, that should be a lot of fuel. This thing should be able to make some power, which it's kind of dumb. Liter per hour pump, gallon per hour, or pound per hour injectors. God, only in America. Kind of hard to tell, but the new injectors are all in. Had to make these little spacers here because the new injectors were a little bit taller. But that buttons up the fuel system now. That's all ready to go. Man, I wish I could fire this thing up, but I still don't have that main bolt for the oil pump pickup. It's on back order, so I guess I'll work on something else. But man, I could probably fire it up if I had that. I've got the starter, and I guess I got to wire the starter, but I have the starter. So, well, I done messed up. I'm not sure how. So got the steering shaft here, and I went to put it in, and it hits the manifold. I have it on there right now, but I had to grind the hell out of this manifold, and it's still. You can see there's a tiny little bit of play, but it's definitely going to hit. So I don't know how I did that. I thought I had this all set up. But what I did was I marked it here, and this is a hollow tube. Cut that middle section out, and I'll put a piece of solid tube in the middle, and that'll give me the wall thickness, like 1/8 inch or so. It'll give me a little bit more play, but man, I feel dumb on this one, but I think it's savable. It should work out all right. Just cut it up and probably cut a bolt down and use that as a sleeve in the middle, and be good as new. Alright, still really tight, but it's got clearance now, so I think it'll work. If not, I'm going to have to totally reroute this thing. But cut a grade A bolt in half, slipped it right in. Got a lot of weld on it, so that works. And then I got it welded up here too. So this thing actually has steering now. If I wanted to move it, I actually could. So that is a huge upgrade. I am really happy about that. So, time to keep buttoning up stuff. Now that the steering's all kind of wrapped up, I need to move on to finish up the exhaust here. So I got this flex coupling, which is a turbo rated flex coupling, which will allow everything to move, because I've got this little gap here, which is just from the manifold gaskets, which I knew was going to happen, because I knew I had to put one of these in here. Just as everything gets hot and cold, it expands. So I'm going to cut this little section out here that I marked, weld this thing in, and then this will all be solid. And then we can move on to, I could put the turbo in permanently, and then onto some boost lines. So I got the exhaust coupler welded in, that all looks good. Exhaust turbo's back on, downpipe's on, everything's set there. And I started plumbing in the boost plumbing. So this goes to the wastegate, or this is the wastegate. This goes to the boost controller. This one just goes to boost. And then that's my dome pressure sensor. And then back here, this is the one on top. And then under here, I need pressure under this thing. And then I also need to get pressure over here for the fuel pressure regulator. So what I did was I had to block off some ports up here. So I plugged this one, which was for the PCV. So I plugged that. There was a little one here. I also plugged this one, and I had to plug the side of the throttle body. So that plugs everything up except for the one main line in the back. And for that, I made this kind of little manifold thing. So in here will be the boost, vacuum, whatever you want to call it. Coming in this one, and then out the right side, that'll go over to the fuel pressure regulator. This one here will come straight up into the boost controller, and then this one will go to the bottom of the wastegate. So everything, that should work pretty well. It'll be tied in the back, and then hose clamped on, and hopefully then I won't have any boost or vacuum leaks, because I got all these plugged up here, so that should work. I've already got some plastic line here. Hopefully it doesn't melt. Melted on the 51, but I don't think this thing's going to be near as hot, so we'll start with this and see how it goes. Wastegate's all plumbed in, and then ran everything back here along the motor. The boost controller's plumbed in. I got the pressure to the fuel pressure regulator. So boost wise, that's all set, it's all done. And then to continue on with cleaning up and plumbing, we got to get pressure and drain out of this thing. The pressure I'm going to grab off the side of the block down here that you can't really even see. You can almost see it down there. Kind of. You can see the fitting hidden way down there. That's the old oil, I think, temp sensor, so I tapped into that. And then what I'll end up doing when I pull the oil pan out down here to put that main bolt in that I still don't have, we'll put a bulkhead fitting into the side of the oil pan and drain into there. But we can at least get the pressure line on and start making that drain line, and then move on to more little cleanup stuff. Well, I went to do the turbo oil feed line, and I broke it. Guess I over tightened it. But I got frustrated with that, and I also bought the wrong lines for the drain, so I couldn't do that. So yeah, everything kind of went sideways. But on the bright side is I did get to do some other stuff. So I got the heater hoses on. They're tucked up nice there. I'm just trying to button stuff up. I got the brake lines run kind of down. I don't have the hoses on, so I didn't do the other end. And if you'll notice, the master's missing because I managed to strip out the master. I've really been on a roll right now, so that was kind of frustrating. But I did get my little block-off plate made there, so that seals everything up. And then this here is the throttle cable. So this thing had no provisions for a throttle cable bracket because they were all drive-by-wire. So I made this little T-bracket here. You can see it. And then I didn't have the right connectors here, so these are actually 1/4-inch brake or airline fittings. They work perfect. So I just need to get the end for that. And then that's done. So cruise control is right here, and then throttle's here. I've checked it, I've got full throttle. I ended up having to cut the pedal up inside and extend it and make a bracket because I couldn't get full throttle. So yeah, but it is coming along. I think I now have enough run that I can put the front clip back on, which that will be super, that'll be really nice. I can't wait to do that. And then I've got some wiring and stuff over here I got to tie up, and then obviously the brake lines and everything I'll have to do them after because I ordered a new master because I stripped that one. Oh, and then the clutch is in too. So I got the F-body master cylinder attached to the Ram slave cylinder. So that should be all good, but I think it's time to put the front clip back on. Finally, I got my main bolt with the stud on the end for the oil pump pickup. So I'll pull that oil pump off, put this in there, put the oil pump pickup on, put the oil pan back on, put the starter in, and then I'm putting the front clip back on. Getting really close. This thing took weeks to come in, but I finally got one, so time to get moving on that. Well, I got the oil pump pickup and the windage tray and gasket on the motor, and I've got my return here plumbed in for the oil for the drain on the turbo. So that's all ready to go. I just got to put the pan in, bolt it up, and then make this hose, and the drain line for the turbo will be done, and we'll finally have the bottom of the motor buttoned up and we can put oil in it. Well, I got the oil pan on, the turbo is all plumbed, feed and return. I fixed that broken fitting, and I kind of started to put in some air intake stuff on here, just because I have it to see how it works. But this video is kind of random, but that's where I'm going to end it up here. And the next one, I mean, really, all I've got to do to get this thing to run is put gas in it, wire the starter, and the charging system. I got a little bit of wiring out here to do, and it should crank, and it should run. So that's going to be the next video. Is it should be damn near running. But this was kind of a lot of little kind of odds and ends stuff, but stuff that needed to be done. So next video, put the core support on, finish the wiring, and fire this thing up. So that one should be pretty damn exciting. I can't wait.